I'm super excited to share with you today one of the most common asked questions, and that is about kitchen knives. How many knives do you need in your kitchen? You don't need that many, to be quite honest. You need about 4. Now, in front of me, I have more than 4, but I'm gonna talk you through which ones you might need and which ones you might prefer. So, starting off, an all-purpose chef's knife, which I have here, is really great. This is a Western or European style knife. And if you prefer this, which many chefs do, then go for this style. But a lot of home cooks and even some chefs are trading in that chef's knife and using one of these. And this is called a santoku knife. And this is more of an Asian style knife. It typically comes with these hollow indentations on the blade of the knife, which helps in any sticky or wet vegetables kind of sliding off the knife as you chop them. So either of these 2 knives, I prefer them on different occasions. You know, depends on what I'm doing, but I would say you only really need one of these. Another important knife to have in the kitchen is a paring knife. I find that this knife is a great all-purpose knife for peeling a lot of vegetables, coring or hulling strawberries. If you're trimming artichokes or things like that, this is a really great knife, especially for vegetables. Very important. A serrated knife. Now, you need a bread knife, and that is a serrated knife. I really love these offset serrated knives because I think that this is not only good for bread, but it's also good when you're cutting cakes and pies. It just really helps in getting out a nice slice of cake or a nice slice of pie. And this offset handle really helps as well because it allows you a little bit of room. You can see if I bring the knife down to the cutting board here, my knuckles or my fingers aren't touching the bottom. So that offset handle really does help. And the 4th knife I would say is a boning knife or some sort of flexible long blade knife. Now this is good for butchering. If you're gonna carve a turkey, I would say that this is a very important knife, but its cousin, I would say, this is a carving knife. Again, it is a flexible blade, a thin blade that you could essentially do some of the same things with the boning knife and the carving knife. Kind of interchangeable. Now, one other knife that I have, or one other style of knife that I have, is one of these Japanese knives. Now, Japanese knives, the majority of them differ from Western style knives like this, in that the blade of the knife is created in a slightly different way. You can see that the edge of the knife, the beveled edge here, is really only on one side. So I'll flip it over and you can see that this side doesn't really have that much of a beveled edge. It's kind of slight on the very, very bottom. And this is the way that the knife is created, and also you need to be mindful of this when you're sharpening a knife. So today I'm gonna show you how to sharpen Western style knives, which I think is most common in everybody's kitchen. So if you're really serious about your kitchen knives and you wanna keep them as sharp as possible, you're going to need to invest in one of these. Now this is called a whetstone or a sharpening stone, and they come one of 2 ways. So in front of me here, I have a stone that has 2 levels of grit coarseness, a fine grit here, and then a coarse grit here. So you always want to start with the coarse side of your whetstone, and then you want to move to the fine side of your whetstone. What you want to make sure you do before you sharpen your knives, you want to soak the stone. Now, I'm going to start on the coarse side, which is the smaller number, and you want to soak it in water for about anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. What you're really looking for is any bubbles that appear. You want the bubbles and the air out of the stone. You want it lubricated with as much water as possible. So when the bubbles stop coming out from inside the stone, you know you're ready to use it. So I've been rotating and soaking for about 20 minutes in total, 10 minutes on each side, and I'm going to now start with the sharpening process. Now, you want to remove the stone from the water because you don't want a slippery surface at all. I'm going to use the little cradle that the stone comes with just so it helps secure it onto the surface so the stone isn't moving. You might need a little bit of water, and I'll just use my hands to kind of spread some water on top of the stone. And now you want to take your knife here and you want to put it flat against the stone. Now, you're not going to sharpen flat against the stone. You're going to lift the back end of the knife up about 15 degrees, 15 to 20 degrees, and that is about maybe the thickness of a matchbook, I would say. And this is the level at which you're going to sharpen your knife. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the knife and you're going to slide it on that 15-degree angle. Now you can slide it towards you or you can slide it away from you. So you want to make sure that you're starting at one end and going to the other. So one clean motion. Today, I think I'm going to go away from me. So start at the tip, 15 degrees, slide on the stone, make sure it's well lubricated, and you're gonna come all the way across the stone. And you wanna do this maybe about 5, 6, even 7 times. It really depends on how dull your knife is and if you see any chips on the blade of your knife. If you see little divots or chips, you might have to do this a little bit more, especially on the coarse side, because you're trying to work those out of the blade of your knife. And now I'm gonna switch to the other side. You can add a little bit more water if your stone gets too dry. And again, you're gonna repeat the same process where you're dragging the blade on that 15-degree angle from the butt end all the way to the tip and apply a good amount of pressure. You can see I have my hand on the knife and I'm holding it down, and this is to ensure that there's even contact with the stone. This looks pretty good here, so that's about 5 or 6 times on each side of the knife. And now I'm going to flip the stone and I'm going to use the finer side of the stone to really refine the blade that we're creating. So you're going from a coarse level now to a finer level. So again, it's the same process. Now you can even hear the difference in the sound this makes with a finer stone, with the finer grit of the stone here. And there you go, you should have a pretty sharp knife. Now you can wipe off a lot of the buildup that has accumulated on your knife here. And now for the final step in your knife sharpening is using one of these. And this is a honing steel. This is what this is called. And this is a very fine texture to it. This isn't really sharpening your knife, it's just giving a very fine edge to it. Now, every time you use your knife, it is a good idea, if you have a honing steel like this, to run it along your honing steel a few times before you start cooking. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a honing steel that has this butt around the end here so it protects your fingers. Never grab the honing steel with your thumb above, otherwise you are likely to cut one of your fingers, so hold it below. So you want to hold the honing blade and the knife about 45 degrees from the surface of your cutting board or your countertop. And again, it's the same motion where you're going from the butt end of the knife to the tip, and you're gonna run this along your honing blade, applying an even amount of pressure a few times. And I like to do it from side to side. So I'm starting with one side of the knife, and then I'm going on the opposite end of the honing blade or the opposite edge of the honing blade. And you can do this maybe 5 or 6 times. You really don't need that much. And now give your knife a little bit of a rinse in water, just so any of that grit comes off. Give your blade a good wipe, and you should have an extremely sharp knife that you can start cooking with just like a pro. Now with these tips and tricks, I encourage you, shop some new knives, see what's out there, find your favorite, and invest in one of these so you have perfectly sharp knives each and every time. Enjoy, guys.